they sent out the acceptance emails, and Jake checked right away and got in. And I knew, and I was so nervous. And I think I waited a half hour, putting everyone through pain. My mom was like crying the whole half hour.
This episode of KNN was brought to you by Pandio. More on them in a little. Today, I had the pleasure of interviewing Jake and Aaron. These two brothers are on a mission to make advanced analytics accessible to all. This was my first time I've had two people on the show, so I think it'll be twice as interesting. Jake and Aaron and their friend Nate founded Mido, a low-code Jupyter Lab plugin that allows you to use Excel commands to generate pandas scripts. In this interview, we learn about how Jake and Aaron learned enough programming to bootstrap this project together. We also hear about their experience in Y Combinator. And at the end, you get a sneak peek into each of our startup ideas that really never saw the light of day. I hope you enjoy. So Aaron, Jake, thank you so much for coming on the show today. You guys have a pretty cool experience building a data science or a data analytics product called Mido. And I wanted to talk with you about your experience doing that, especially as college students. Again, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We're excited to be here. Big fans, so it's cool to be on.
Awesome. So the first thing I wanted to get from both of you is just where you first got interested in data analytics in general. Where you first kind of heard about this. Was it like a pivotal aha moment, or is this a slow progression where you're like, oh wow, this is pretty cool, I want to dig deeper, and then you realized, oh, we're going to build a product related to this?
Yeah, I can start with it, Aaron. You definitely share for yourself. I was in the business school undergrad, and I think a lot of people, there's a lot of pressure to like go into like finance or consulting, and there's not a lot of talk about, oh, there's these other interesting avenues that you can do with like a business degree. So I started working in a data analytics company because I could get a more long-term internship there. And so I ended for like sophomore all the way through senior year of college, I was sort of working while taking classes. It was more like the project management side of like some data analytics and machine learning projects, but definitely got to see how it works at a pretty large company. And then, it's interesting to sort of be in that space now in a smaller company as well. But I just kind of got into it and really fell in love with the work.
Incredible. What about your end?
Yeah, I think I didn't have the ability to do a full-time job and college at the same time, so probably a little bit more of a traditional like understanding of data science. But I think I really got interested in it. I took a class at Penn. It was taught by Peter Fader. He's a pretty big in the stat world. It's all about kind of customer-based corporate valuation, and it was really fascinating class. We kind of jumped into all of these different probabilistic models on how you can, think about customer lifetime value and then kind of evaluate, business value off of that. So I kind of had this really cool experience coming from like a little bit more of a theoretical perspective about how that all operates. And then the following summer, I did an internship at Capital One, where it's kind of the opposite. And it was all about, building models in Excel and transforming them into pandas, scripts to run on some system somewhere. So I kind of got to see a little bit of, I think, both sides of what kind of the theoretical world of data science and data analytics looks like, and then kind of what does the practical implementation look like right now. That's quite different.
That's really cool. You guys, I like how you both have a little bit of a different binding factor to the analytics. And so I should say you guys are the first two guest interview that I've ever done. So you should
cool.
feel honored about
that.
And you're both brothers, fraternal twins, as you told me. Is it weird going to school with your brother? It seems like you guys also studied fairly similar things.
Yeah. So, well, Aaron and I have been going to school together since kindergarten, I guess.
Yeah.
So we had some experience with it, but I mean, the big like potential breaking point was like, were we going to go to the same college or not? And we both ended up getting into Penn, which I think we both applied early decision. So we were both lined up and wanted to go there, I guess, which was good. And we're both from the Philly area, so we're familiar with the school, and it was definitely enticing. And both of us were in the business school, at least initially, and then Aaron went on and got into the engineering school as well. But yeah, it was cool. I think in the beginning we tried to like make different friend groups. But the thing was that from our high school, so like our high school was a very big feeder into that school because it was a local Philly school or Philly suburb school. So we ended up knowing just pretty much all the same people to start. So we lived set apart freshman and sophomore year, but then junior and senior year, we lived together with our other friends. And I should also shout out Nate Rush. I would put his Twitter handle here. If I knew it, I would just line it across the screen. And he went to high school with us too, and he's also one of the founders of the company. He couldn't be here today, but yeah, we went to college and high school with him too. So we've all kind of known each other for a while.
That's all. Was there like one? Were you a little nervous at one point in time that one of you would get in and the other one wouldn't, or was that just like, oh, we'll both probably get in, or it'll be fine?
So we applied early decision. So we both found out on the same day if we were getting in or not. And I think it was 3 p.m. They sent out the acceptance emails, and Jake checked right away and got in. And I knew, and I was so nervous. And I think I waited a half hour, putting everyone through pain. My mom was like crying the whole half hour just out of anxiety. But there was definitely from my perspective a lot of anxiety around that.
I can imagine. Did you do that just because you wanted to put everyone through a little bit of?
No, I was nervous. I didn't want to get rejected after Jake got in.
Is there a little sibling rivalry associated just with business, with grades, and those types of things in general, or would that have been just water under the bridge?
Not with grades, mostly because Aaron always had better grades than me. So if I looked
at
it
as a shoe-in, then you're
yeah, exactly.
Too upset. No,
but Jake beat me on the SATs, so it was a little back and forth there.
That's true. But yeah, I don't think we're that competitive.
We've been on the same team a lot. I think we played sports together, and we were always on the same team. So I think it was a lot of rooting for each other.
Awesome. Well, it sounds natural with a company then that you're on the same team. So before we get too much more into Mito, I want to get an understanding also of where you first started programming. You guys built this from what I understand. So what was that like, especially when you guys started initially, at the very least, in a purely business focused domain?
Yeah. So talking about programming without Nate, I think is a bit tough. He's definitely the technical brain behind Mido, and I've got to learn a lot from working with him. But Nate and I both started coding at Penn. We both were computer science students. He went on to do a lot of, similar to Jake. Nate kind of worked throughout college doing Ethereum. He worked at the Ethereum Foundation doing algorithmic research and got to do a lot of programming there, which is really amazing experience. And I've been working with Nate now on Mido for the past, I think we broke ground on Mido August 30th, I think. So it's been just about, I think now officially 6 months of working on Mido. And before that, we were working on some other things, mostly kind of building spreadsheet tooling for the Excel, workbook space. But in terms of kind of how we got started, it was really just, it was a big project. I think that we were both a little intimidated by it, but we started small with like a really well-defined MVP, and then, it's easy to build a well-defined MVP, and then we just kept adding features from there.
Awesome. And so just for some clarification for myself and for listeners, can you more specifically define what Mido is and also give us a little bit of an origin story?
Yeah. Aaron, maybe you want to talk about, I don't know, the tool, and I can talk about how we got there.
Yeah, for sure. So Mido, at its core, it's a Jupyter Lab extension, and it gives users a front-end spreadsheet. So you can interact with your data. You can write spreadsheet formulas. You can do things like merging data sets and pivoting data set, creating pivot tables. And then as you're editing and as you're interacting with the spreadsheet, behind the scenes, Mido automatically generates the equivalent pandas code. So if you can imagine a Jupyter notebook, you have one cell that's the spreadsheet, and the cell right below is kind of like a transcript, or you kind of think of it like as recording a Python macro. So really the tool is just all about making it easier to do, the quick data cleaning and data analysis that you could previously do in Excel, but for people who have complex analyses that maybe have huge data sets, so you couldn't think about putting in a spreadsheet, or you're really interested in kind of creating a repeatable process. Or I think the other big thing that is something that we probably kind of learned along the way is just the ability to kind of audit and understand a Python, like a Jupyter notebook, is so much simpler than trying to understand and trace back all the dependencies in an Excel workbook. And so I think we've actually seen a lot of people who are interested in Mido from that angle as well.
Very cool.
Yeah. In terms of how we got there, so we started building spreadsheet tooling like early summer 2020. So we had this. Our initial idea was GitHub for Excel. So a asynchronous collaboration network for financial modelers. Really, we're really selling into the finance space. We got into Y Combinator with that idea. So we're in the summer Y Combinator batch, which was a cool experience just from like an entrepreneurship perspective, being 22 or 23 and meeting with all these amazing people and learning so much. It was like a really, really cool experience. And it was remote too, which was interesting as well. But yeah, so we had that idea, interesting idea, to talk to lots of large institutions about piloting and things like that. But I think we just found as some 23-year-olds, like first product ever made, selling into places like Goldman Sachs, like huge banks, just like the sales cycles are just like 18 months. And it was just going to be so long to get validation. Very hard thing to do, I think, without more experience. So we switched to what we thought was like a more self-service type of version of that tool, like a more one-to-one version of that tool that didn't require a team, which was a redlining tool for Excel. So if you're familiar with redlining in Word, we sort of applied that, understanding changes, tracking changes, managing changes, seeing how changes flow through to an output, and apply that to Excel. And that had some success with that. We sold that to some private equity firms, but really found that the pain point we were building around just wasn't big enough to make a huge company. We were like, we were helping, but in a minor way, not in a way that we thought we could turn into a big company that we could really grow throughout the years. So took a step back then. This is sort of at the end of the Y Combinator batch, and said, what are the biggest problems that people face with data analysis, probably in some sort of spreadsheet format. And it was really one that, spreadsheets don't hold a lot of data, capped out at like 1 million lines. And if you're trying to even do like 100,000 lines, it's super slow. And that's sort of the second piece. So the first is that data size limit is very low. The second is they're very slow. And the third is that repeatability is really hard. And so we found the places that actually does really well all these things, speed, large data sizes, and replicability, is Python. So we thought it'd be interesting to sort of bring this front end piece of a spreadsheet into Python and kind of combine these into the best of both worlds. And I think the interesting thing is that when we tell that story, it sounds like we're building this tool for like spreadsheet users. And I think initially we thought a lot about that, but as we built the tool and put it on the market and found out where the interest is, we've really found that it's actually more the Python, the data science space, that is more interested in the tool than the spreadsheet space. And now we're sort of building this data science tool because people are really, enjoy, I think that's what Aaron was saying, like they enjoy the visual aspect that a spreadsheet gives them, but they can't use it because it can't handle their data size. So by giving them the benefits of a spreadsheet inside Jupyter, they can essentially have a spreadsheet that's really made for large data and generates code for them and is interactive with their Python analysis. So that's kind of where we are today.
Now, a quick word from this episode's sponsor, Pandio. Taking advantage of machine learning doesn't just mean that you have a lot of data. It means that you have the ability to access, to query, and to move that data in a seamless manner across your enterprise. Pandio is the only data orchestration layer that enables you to connect different data sources, query data in place as if it were a single database, and move that data at scale. Let your data science teams focus on optimizing the models for data-driven decisions, and let Pandio focus on the logistics. Go to pandio.com, that's pandio.com, for a free trial to see how Pandio can drive massive value for your data transformation. Now back to the episode.
Really cool. I'd love to hear more about your experience with YC. I applied quite a long time ago for something that didn't really pan out, but what was that like? What was the mentorship like? What were the resources like? And, is that a route that you'd recommend almost anyone going for entrepreneurship? Was there, do you think that the time investment was worth it, especially as virtually, rather than being there in person?
I think definitely as first-time founders, it was incredibly worthwhile. We had no idea what we were doing. I mean, so Jake mentioned we were building GitHub for Excel. Before that, we were building GitHub for everything was what we were wanting to do. And essentially we were sitting in our basement of our college house, coding away at this generalized version control system. And, as soon as we got into YC, we kind of, the first thing they tell you is, you have to pick a very specific target customer, talk to them as much as you can, and build like an MVP version and try to get validation as quickly as possible. And we were pretty much doing the exact opposite of that beforehand. So just from that perspective, it was incredibly valuable for us. I think the mentorship and was great. You essentially get to meet with your your group partner once or twice a week, and they give you like personalized one-on-one or one-on founding team feedback, which was really helpful. And I think it was all kind of, they've seen one of our partners, Dalton. I think he's been there for a few years. So I think he mentioned he's gone through like 500 companies of mentorship. So he's just seen so much, and he's done so much pattern recognition about what works and what doesn't work. It was really helpful. I think the thing that we missed was a little bit more of the community aspect. Because we were remote, we didn't get to like bump into other founders in the hallway and make relationships like that, which I think would have been nice.
Cool. I think the remote part was bittersweet though, because definitely sucks. Definitely like so many cool people that I got to meet over Zoom that I wish I could go out for a coffee with. But the thing that you kind of learn about YC is that like, you're not there to network with people. You're there to build your company. And sometimes the distraction of meeting all these interesting people from all over the world can kind of hold you back. And also for us, like we would have moved to San Francisco for the first time. I know like I would have been trying to go down to the wharf every night, but instead I was like at home in my basement. It was actually a much better place to focus. So I think that the remote nature did benefit, especially as first time founders, and like it allowed us to have a little bit more tunnel vision on like, okay, these are the people we're looking at as our mentors. This is the guidance. These are the frameworks we're using, as opposed to talking to 100 people a week from different companies and trying to parse through what's the good advice, what's the bad advice, what should we be doing. It was sometimes you just have to pick something and stick with it, and then pivot and iterate when the time is right. And that's another lesson I think we learned from there as well.
For sure. I have a question about the GitHub for everything. Isn't technically GitHub already fulfilling that purpose? Because I can put an Excel workbook into GitHub and update it and essentially just save it there, right? Over and over. I could put a PowerPoint in there in theory.
Yeah.
I mean, it works a little better for code, but
yeah, definitely. So I think you can do things like put an Excel workbook, or you could put a PowerPoint, or even you could put like, I think I just have never tried, but I'm pretty sure you could put like an MP3 file if you wanted in there. I think what we were really kind of interested in was, so we had a friend who does at college, he creates music with a couple of friends who went to different schools, and they weren't using GarageBand. He would be mad if I said it was some more advanced platform, like Ableton maybe, I'm not sure. And they would, our friend Johnny, he would create some beats. He would send it to a friend at another school, and that kid, I don't know what his name was, would send back and say, oh, I really liked it, but I removed the bass track and added a new thing. And then another friend would like take another piece and switch it out. And I think with what you could do with Git is you could like version control those different, different aspects. Well, so like right now with Git, you couldn't do that because it has no understanding of like what a Ableton file looks like. So we were really interested in giving you the same kind of merging and pull request kind of functionality, but for any sort of collaboration that you were doing on any file format.
But if you're trying to point out why our first idea was a bad idea, there's a long line. You're gonna have to get into a huge line to start doing that.
No, I wasn't. I was just curious.
No. Okay.
So I'd love to hear more about the Mido, the name. You gave me a pretty funny story about that, and
yeah. We've had our company, we've spent a little too much time debating names, but there's some importance to the name, I think. The name Mito, it's short, not really short for, but the reason it's called Mito is because of the word mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cell, which is like, that phrase we all learned in like 7th grade. And then for some reason it's become like a meme on Twitter in the last, year or two. And so mitochondria, powerhouse of the cell. Excel sheets have cells, or spreadsheets have cells, and Jupyter notebooks also have cells. So we're sort of bringing those together into the same environment, powering both of them. Mito is the powerhouse of the cell, and that's the last I'll ever speak of that.
I'm sure it is not the last you'll ever speak of it. Maybe the last in this conversation, but I actually really enjoy that. I have quite a lot of fun with naming conventions and puns and stuff on my channel.
Oh, sweet. We love that too.
The name of this podcast is
your podcast is a great name.
Yeah.
So that was crowdsourced. I can't take credit for that, but I can take credit for actually crowdsourcing something. So at the very least,
that's hard.
So something that occurs to me that as you were building this, you're also students. It seems like you were also both working to some extent during this process. How did you balance time between academics, between this company, between internships, all of these things? What did that look like?
I think it was tough. And there was a bit of time where, so Jake was the only person who was a student, a full-time employee, and working on Mido, which used to be called Saga at the same time. And so there was definitely a little bit of tension around whether Jake was going to quit his job to work on Mido full-time with Nate and I, or if not, and a lot of tense conversations. But I think in truth, we worked on it more kind of like thinking about it and getting excited about the company while we were still at Penn and still taking at least in-person classes. Once COVID struck and Penn sent everybody home, we found ourselves at home taking all our classes pass fail and not much else to do besides work on Mido. So I think that's really around May of last year is really when we got into YC and we started having, hours and hours and hours a week to really dedicate to it. So there wasn't a ton of time where we were trying to really manage both, or at least there was some time, but we were failing at managing both, I would say.
I can relate to that. I fail to manage quite a few plates that I have spinning. Let's say, like, since you both are either finished with school or in the process of finishing school, what is next? Are you guys going to be working on Mido full time? What is that? What do the next steps look like for you?
Yeah, so we've basically been full time since the summer. Next step is really, we in terms of, I guess, a little bit of the timeline of like our launch until now. So we launched like a landing page and started building the tool sort of at the same time, like September 1st, basically, which definitely a strategy I highly recommend for other people interested in like entrepreneurship. One of the few lessons that I would definitely like try to impart to others is like try and get feedback as quickly as possible. And like people signing up for a landing page for like a wait list is not, it's not the best validation. Obviously, like repeated retention or usage on your tool is the best thing, but it's the best you can get that early, and it's a really cheap way to do it. So at the same time, while Aaron and Nate were sort of building MVP, we were starting to build an understanding of like what are the features people are looking for and things like that. So doing those in tandem, I think, is something we definitely recommend as opposed to just like building something blindly.
Quick aside, how did you get traffic to the landing page? What did that look like? Were you running ads? Were you just word of mouthing it? What did that look like?
Yeah, we didn't run any ads. I don't think we spent anything on advertising for we barely spent anything till now, and especially not for the first like 3-4 months. Mostly forums. So Reddit was super supportive. We would post in subreddits, r/Python, r/Excel. I remember I remember like the first day we launched, I think the first thing we posted was like r/Excel. And we were like, if we get like 10 signups, this will be awesome. And I think we got like 70 signups the first day, which was huge for us. And like, obviously those numbers are, definitely want to grow on those numbers, but that was super encouraging to start. Especially compared to what we were doing in the past, it was very one-to-one. We were reaching out to people specifically. It was a little bit more enterprise model. So it was like, we would talk to like 5 new companies a week or something and try and onboard them. But to get like 70 potential interested people in one day was a very new thing for us. And doing a more mass approach was really cool. But yeah, so that's how we got people. Now we've expanded on that a little bit. We've networked with people on LinkedIn. We've partnered with different channels. Got a shout out the Data Professor, one of our favorite YouTube channels. We did some stuff with him. He's really great, and that's brought traffic to us. And then we actually just did a launch on like a show hacker, sort of a soft launch on Hacker News recently, and that brought us a lot of new traffic, and still getting some of that in the last week or so, last few days. So a lot of just does a lot of like organic posting places and getting usage that way, and then like word of mouth and referrals from current customers has been great. But yeah, definitely not. So the next step of that is like doing like some more mass marketing, putting up Google ads, things like that, paid sponsorships and stuff like that. But not exactly what we want to be doing yet, but that's the future for sure.
Awesome. And as a product, how do you expect Mido to evolve? What are kind of the next like features, dev things that you're working on?
Yeah, I can speak to that a bit. So I think to start, maybe I'll describe what Mido does now, and then I could say where we're going. So right now, Mido is it's a spreadsheet. So what that means is you can write spreadsheet formulas. So we support things like the mid function in Excel and the left and right functions and date parsing and stuff like that. So you can click on a new column, you can do equals upper and pass it in the column you want to turn to uppercase. The other types of things that Mido lets you do is kind of a little bit more like point and click. So things like creating merging sheets together, creating pivot tables, seeing the history of your analysis, so going back in time and making sure you didn't mess up and stuff like that. I think the couple places that we want to expand, one is having more kind of right now it's a one-way street from Mido to the generated code, something that a lot of our users are interested in. And I think this touches on what Jake said about we're really building for people who are in the Python world already, not coming from the Excel world to the Python world. They're interested in being able to write Python code to edit the spreadsheet as well. So, Excel is such a big tool that there's no hope for us to try to build everything right now. So giving people a little bit more flexibility to write Python code to augment the features that we don't have is one thing that we want to do. I think the other thing is kind of touching on that, what we talked about earlier in terms of creating and like repeating macros. We call them saving and repeating analyses. Right now, it's a little bit rigid. If you save an analysis and maybe you have some column renames and stuff like that, if you want to replay that analysis, you have to have the same column names to start. And this so your data has to really kind of be an exact match in some regards. So adding more flexibility and ways to kind of update your analysis as you go. So I think those are kind of things that we want to do in the short run. In the longer run, we're interested in kind of pushing the notion of this like no code or like code optional way of creating Python analyses, like a little bit more to the max. If Nate was here, he could articulate his vision a little bit more, I think, but he talks a lot about kind of creating a no code or transitional IDE to help people that aren't super comfortable yet in kind of the Python analytics or even just like the Python world in general, creating robust and professional, applications or analyses.
Awesome. Well, it's interesting you bring up the kind of two-way street thing. So I actually use Spider for most of my analysis. I don't use Jupyter at all because I like that they have very easy, just like pop out windows where you can see the whole data frame, essentially like an Excel spreadsheet. So yeah, I'll be working through, I'll make some adjustments to the data frame. I'll click it, I'll scroll through it to see what it looks like. Having something like that more in real time would be really appealing to me. I'd probably, out of anything, make a lot of use out of functionality like that in Jupyter. That would essentially change my workflow to make that far more interesting to me. I haven't experimented with Jupyter Lab as much as I probably should have, but something hopefully I'll get.
I'd love to ask you, like, as you mentioned, like, you can pop out a window and see your data frame. Certainly one of the benefits of our tool is just like to visualize your data frame. It's just a great thing to do, to see your data instead of take it out of the code context sometimes. And then obviously in our tool, you can actually edit the data from that window you're popping out from that spreadsheet and then get the equivalent code. So you can sort of go between code and spreadsheet as much as you want. But I'd love to ask you, and sort of one of the ways we think about where to take our tool is like, when you're using Python, like what are the pieces, what are the types of things you're doing, graphing, data cleaning, machine learning, where you wish you had a more visual component in real time?
Mostly it's the data cleaning. So I'll make a change. Let's say I want to replace like a letter or like a name in a data frame with a blank or like a hashed value or something like that.
Yeah.
I'll make that change and then I go look in the window to see if it went through, rather than just like running the column in the cell and having it print out. To me, like a GUI is useful there. that's probably, in a Jupyter notebook, which I guess I still do use sometimes for like Kaggle competitions, like making those changes and then like printing everything and like looking through it in that format. It takes up a lot of screen real estate. So having something maybe on the side of the screen that doesn't mess with the scroll or my code cells would be pretty compelling to me.
Yeah, that's cool.
I think it's.
Oh, sorry. Go there.
I was just gonna say, like, I think for things like creating pivot tables, I have fortunately not had to create too many pivot tables just in pandas when I didn't have Mido, but just like the amount of times that I have to like reconfigure in Excel to make a pivot table, and I'm in live time configuring and looking at the result. I just trying to do that in the Jupyter notebook or in anything else where you have to make an edit, run a cell, probably get a syntax error, fight that syntax error a bit, then hopefully you can print something out, and then you realize, oh, I need to add a new column, and so like it really takes you out of your flow when you have to break up your workflow without having that kind of like live back and forth, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I usually use some like tooling for pivot tables, so I'm a big fan of Streamlit, and it's pretty easy to like you have to create another like a web window, but you can choose the parameters and have a pivot table pop up and do it graphically like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Probably more overhead than is really needed, but I use pivot tables a lot, so I got pretty comfortable with them pretty quickly. Probably more than most normal data scientists do. I think like a more data science way is to like group by and make the views that way. But I think a pivot table in pandas is very useful. Although sometimes I'll use just pivot instead and it won't work, and I'll be like, why isn't this working? And I just have to add the table portion there, which is a bit frustrating. But
and I think that thing where there's three different ways you could kind of go about creating pivot tables or things like pivot tables and pandas is one of the reasons that like getting started, if you're relatively new to pandas, or even if you've been doing it for a decent amount of time, just like you're always having to kind of figure out and like fight with the documentation and update your mental model of what you're doing. And I think that kind of removing a lot of that ambiguity is what a lot of people find really valuable about Mido right now.
Yeah, getting the amount of time people spend, knowing what they want to do, but not knowing the exact syntax that's a huge part of analysis for a lot of people to speak to. And even if you're really good at Python, Mido can really cut down on that time and allow you to achieve your analysis quicker because part of it is visual. Like I think it goes back to like our long-term religion and like core belief, which is that there are like, there are some we believe in Python and we want more people using Python. It's one of the things we hope this tool will do in the end is make Python more accessible for those who know it less, but also for those who use it a lot and allow them to do it even more. But we believe there are some things that like a spreadsheet interface is like at its core really great for. Like a pivot table is an example of that. And so that's our belief. It's like bringing this visual aspect, comparing it with Python, they complement each other to really bring you the best of both worlds.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially as companies try to transition towards data science, and you also have this issue that the volume of data is increasing drastically. It's nice to be able to have some familiarity in this kind of completely new domain of like massive data. So it's pretty exciting to hear that. I'm interested in how it works on like a cloud platforms or things along those lines. Is that something that has good functionality? Is that some area you're looking to expand? I probably should have thought a little bit more about the philosophy and the dynamics of that, but love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, totally. So right now, Mido only works in JupyterLab. So there's lots of other notebook-like environments that people are using. So like Google Colab is a good example of, a cloud environment for running these notebooks, and it's there's tons of collaboration features. So we hear all the time people wanting to run Mido in like a Google Colab or a Deep Note environment. So we'd love to kind of expand there. Right now, how people are using Mido is either we have a hosted version of JupyterLab. It's just running on AWS. So if you don't have JupyterLab configured already locally, you just create an account and you're ready to go in like 30 seconds. I would say like half of the people are doing that. The other half of the people are, just running JupyterLab locally on their computer and installing Mido locally. If you do want to do that, we have some documentation about how to do it. It's not quite as straightforward as just running pip install Mido sheet. There's a couple extra steps which trips a lot of people up. So definitely check out the documentation.
Very cool. Well, that's really all the questions I had. At the end of each of these interviews, I like to leave the floor open to you guys to either talk about some advice you have, perhaps for people trying to start businesses in the space. You're welcome to talk about, I don't know, like your hobbies, favorite sports team, really anything. Someone talked about like a device used for playing electronic music, things like that in the past. So it's usually a bit paralyzing to just open the floor, but you guys are welcome to really talk about whatever you want.
That's cool. That's a level
A lot
of
of
freedom.
power.
I've never had an open mic like that.
I know. You really learn a lot about people when you hand them a mic and say speak.
I'll give something short in there. My thing is there's this concept, and it's kind of like a joke at business school where it's like, I have this great idea. I'm a non-technical co-founder. I have this amazing idea. I need someone to code it for me. One thing I think I've learned a lot about and become a huge believer in is that like you can test things very cheaply before you like put $100,000 into prototyping something or like paying for developers or bringing on a CTO and paying them. So if there are any people listening who are like non-technical co-founders like myself, who have this idea but don't know how to how to test it, they think like, oh, I need someone to code this before I can like really go for it. I would disagree and say there's lots of things you can do that are really cheap. You can put up a landing page and see if you get signups. You can fake certain parts of things and try and see if people are interested in this tool that you're saying does this really complex thing on the background, but you're actually just doing it all manually, hoping to automate it at some point. So I'm encouraging people to find cheap ways to test their ideas and just get started as quickly as possible.
Awesome. I love that.
I'll give another more sincere one as well, but Jake, I think we should end on something crazy. So figure something out. I think kind of the biggest thing that I've been learning, I've of course been learning a lot from like how to design software and implement software and design and think about building MVPs and product design, which has all been incredible. But I think the biggest kind of takeaway that I have so far is it's so much about like the culture and the people that you're working with. I think we're all really lucky. Jake and I are obviously twin brothers. Nate went to high school with us and went to Penn with us. And, we've been living with him for years. So I think we had this really solid foundation of, friendship and caring about each other to build on. But I still think that there's things in our relationships that have come out through working so closely together. And Jake and I are a room away right now. So we obviously live together as well. That makes it, makes working together on something that you're so passionate about and putting so much time into really, really tolling. And if you don't take time to, we do every night, we have feedback sessions where we get to like talk to each other about not only like I didn't like how you spoke to me in this setting. And maybe we take a little bit too far sometimes, but I think investing in those relationships is just incredibly important for like the longevity of working together for such a long time.
For sure. Well, it's funny you say that. I'll let you stall Jake a little bit for something to think about. But I've noticed anecdotally a lot of brothers or like family businesses starting in AI or in the entrepreneurship space. So in a past podcast episode, which I'll link above, I talked with Jeremy Harris about how him and his brother started Sharpest Minds, which is a data science mentorship program that was also YC backed. And probably the most famous example, or one of the most famous examples, is Elon Musk and his brother really starting quite a few businesses together and having what some would consider some mild success there as well. So I think that there is definitely something to be said there where you can say some stuff to your family members in business that's probably a bit more authentic than you can say, and you're like friends, than you can say to like regular business partners, because at the end of the day you were like friends first or you were brothers first, and like those bonds hopefully run a little deeper than the business ones do. On the other side, there's that flip side of where like you're stuck with this person whether the business deal goes well or bad because you are brothers or you're family. So I think that's like something I want to do a quantitative study on to figure out if, hey, there's something there. I think it's a little late for me to have a brother, but who knows?
That's cool. All right. My thing, I have two options. If you guys don't have good ones for this, then I can go to my other one, which is a bit more personal and maybe more interesting. But it would be cool. Maybe I'll end with the other one also. As regardless, it would be cool maybe if we each pitched with a lot of conviction the worst startup idea we've ever had.
Yeah, I'm down. I have
Do you
to think
have
of
one?
one. I mean, all of my startup ideas have been great, but no, just kidding.
Well, all right.
I'll go
I'll pitch
last.
mine first. I'll stall for you now. It's a bad idea. I agree this is a bad idea, but I believe it would work, and I think it's a good idea.
Let me guess that this is gonna be called Last to Tap.
Yes, called Last Step. Name, it's not patent. Anyone's free to take this name. Please steal this idea if you think it's good and you can pull it off. Essentially, maybe like junior of high school, where I told this idea to Aaron and Nate first, probably one of the first startup ideas we talked about. I reinvented the lottery. Thus that you don't have to buy tickets. So currently you buy a ticket for the lottery, number gets drawn, you win a bunch of money. My lottery is this. It's a week long. It's a web page. It's a week long. There's a button. There's the button. There's just a blank web page with a button in the middle. Red button says, click this button. If you click the button, sorry, I'm doing a bad job explaining it. This is not, it should make the idea even worse. But essentially the one thing I forgot to add is that the lottery has a preset time, which is the lottery time. So let's say it's Tuesday at 7 p.m. If you're the last person to click the button before Tuesday at 7 p.m., you win the money. However much money has been raised that week. But the time changes every week. So the incentive is you kind of want to just be on the app all the time, clicking the button, because you never know when the lottery time is, and every week you could win a ton of money. The way the company makes money and the way the earnings are shared out is that all that white space that's not the red button, you just load it with ads. And as the company, as it gets more clicks and the website becomes more popular, you get bigger deals, bigger sponsorships. Maybe Bud Light buys for $1 million one time the whole page, and then the winnings that week are like $75,000, $750,000, and me, the owner of the company, gets to take away the $250,000.
I hate to tell you this, but something like that already exists in app form. So it's like a scratch off app. And so you get like access to a certain number of scratch offs each day.
Gotcha.
And that's exactly how they do it. They fund it based on the ad revenue from people coming. And so it's like a little bit more fixed. You're scratching off and you win like $5-10. You can win $50. You can win like $1,000-1,200. But you just have people coming in and constantly scratching off.
But no offense to those people. I think my idea is better. You go on, you click a button, you're scratching. You have a second break at work. You just go on and I'm gonna do my 10 clicks today. So I still believe in it, but we'll see.
All right, I can go next if you want. I don't have a name for this idea. I actually don't think it's that stupid idea, but I'll let you guys be the judge.
We'll be the judge.
So I really liked Duolingo. I was trying to learn Spanish.
Cool.
And I went to South America a couple of years ago and I had a good time. My Spanish was pretty marginal. I kind of burned out from learning it, but I loved that it was free, right? To me, that was good. It had good, compelling structure. But I wasn't as motivated because I didn't have any like stake in it, right? So I think that there is value in like paid courses. I don't think they should be that expensive, but like there is like that weird psychology of because you paid for it, you might be more inclined to do it. So my thought is, why don't you kind of get the benefits of both worlds by paying up front and earning some of your money back as you get further into the lesson plan. So let's say I have a website where I learn, let's say it's Duolingo. And if I don't go through it and I pay $100, each module I go through, I get back like $10. And so over the course of the thing, once I get to the final module, maybe I earn back 90 of my own dollars.
Yeah.
And it's like a weird, strange incentive system that is created by you putting something up front. And then, maybe some of that money goes into like, let's say you're learning Spanish, you get like a discount code to Chipotle or something. I don't know what that would be. But to me, that's also really compelling because the company gets access to cash up front. And so I have all of that $100. I can invest that however it is. And by the time the payout is maybe 6 months, a year later, I could actually gain interest on that in addition to maybe the $10 I earned from that thing. So I think it's a good business play because you're getting a lot of cash up front on hand, but it's also an educational learning play for creating a like better incentive structure than is currently out there.
Cool.
I think it's a good idea. I love playing with the game theory there, but I also have bad news for you. I don't
Yeah,
know if it's Duolingo, but I just recently heard of one of these apps. They had a deal where you could pay like $300 for a daily live lesson, and as long I think it was as long as you didn't miss a single day, at the end you would get like $200 back. But if you missed any lesson,
I think we should get all your money back.
or maybe it's all your money back.
Interesting.
But I like the
that
play. Okay, mine. I would say it's not stupid, but I think it is probably stupid. I think this was Jake and I's first ever kind of startup idea that we had in maybe 7th grade. We called it Threads. The idea
that was like senior year of high school. Was it?
Oh, don't say that. Let's stick with 7th grade.
That was great.
All right, maybe it's later. So the idea is it's a fashion app, and we're both wearing pretty much a white t-shirt, so we're clearly not the people to build this. But
you guys got to get some Ken's Nearest Neighbors merch.
Hey,
I'll do that. So the idea is it's essentially Instagram, and you instead of just posting like a cool picture of you at the beach or something, your like mission is to post the most like fashionable outfit that you can. And what you do is you would tag, I think I'm remembering all the details. You would tag each piece of clothing. So this is, I don't know where this is from, but I wear sometimes wear J. Crew. So I would tag my like J. Crew blue shirt, and it would link to the website. And so how Threads would make money is companies would pay to have their clothing featured. And then kind of the cool contest would be each week or some interval, we would hire a couple celebrities to come on and pick the outfits that they think are the best, and then they would buy you the outfit, and then they would go wear that outfit out in some event or something like that. But it's
I still think it's a good idea.
I think it's a little overcomplicated. You could make a lot of money just from affiliate links and having affiliate relationships with other companies if you're sending them traffic. I think clothing companies do that a lot. That's how Vivino works. Are you familiar with Vivino?
No, what's that?
Oh, it's like one of the coolest probably apps ever. I actually don't really drink much anymore, but essentially the app is it's an iPhone app. You take a picture of a wine bottle of the tag, and it tells you like what the user ratings are for the wine. So people will go in and review it. And it'll also tell you what the average price of the wine is. So you can take a bunch of pictures of different wines, and you can compare them in real time and against the average price of what you expect the like wine to be. So you can see if you're getting ripped off, if you're getting a good deal, whatever that might be. And also there's like a good community around it. And if I am at like a restaurant, right, I can take a picture of the bottle of the wine. I can take a picture of the menu, and it gives all the ratings, all these things. But let's say I'm at a restaurant and I loved the glass of wine I had. Right there in the app, I can find out like, I think I can order the wine and have it delivered to my house or something.
Oh, that's cool.
And they get a commission out of that. Really like super cool product. Highly recommend.
We should check it out. There's some startup out of MIT, and their whole thing is it's an app. You take a survey. I think it's a 5-question survey, and then they send you wine based off your responses. And apparently it's like they get it really well. I don't know how much I believe it. I haven't done it.
I was actually looking to make a competing product with that. It's called Pocket Som. It's kind of fizzled out. Again, like once the pandemic started, I literally stopped drinking because I was by myself a lot, and I thought that would be it's not a good pattern to get into. But essentially, we were going to use some fairly advanced machine learning with like wine sentiment data and wine, like the features you get from wine, whether it's like dry or sweet. Oh my goodness, I forgot what the other features were. It's been a while. But in theory, we could predict how an individual person would match up with a certain wine, and we could do some like clustering analysis to see what wines were grouped together. And eventually I wanted to get into like the science behind wine, like the sugar content, those types of things, to see if we could prove what would be a good wine or a bad wine or what people would like. Because I think so much of that space is like based on like non-scientific things, like, oh, I can taste the earthiness of this, and like it has hints of chocolate and like watercress. Like, really? So I would love to use actual machine learning to just upend that industry, because I think a lot of it is just absolutely bogus.
I read something.
I had a similar idea where it's you send me a handle of alcohol and then I answer a questionnaire about you and send it back to
you. There you go.
Awesome. Well, I think that is a very good way to end. Thank you guys so much for coming in. I think this will be out in a couple weeks here, and
cool.
And yeah, excited to hear where things go.
Yeah, appreciate it. It was awesome meeting you, and we met you before, but meeting you again and chatting.
Awesome.
Thanks,